So, today we're going to go through every location on every map where hatch can spawn when you bring a hatch offering. These are all the maps in Dead by Daylight right now, and these are the amount of main or shack spawns that each map has. On top of this, we'll also be going through each map individually, where I'll show you the location and number of each hatch spawn, as well as provide tips on where the hatch spawns in relation to the map environment. Before we dive into all the maps and hatch locations, I want to explain the method I used to gather this data. Firstly, I loaded into every map multiple times with a bot who had either an annotator blueprint offering, which is the offering for hatch to spawn in shack, or a Vigo's blueprint offering, which is the offering for hatch to spawn in main. You can tell the difference between them because 1, they look different, and 2, Vigo's blueprint has a V in the right corner. Alternatively, you can just hover over them. I did this 5 times on each map with Vigo's blueprint and a further 2 times per map bringing the annotator blueprint. I also loaded into each map 1 additional time for each spawn I found. For example, there are 3 main spawns in Ormond and 1 hatch spawn, so I loaded into this map at least 9 times to check the locations. In total, this took me 11 hours and 4 minutes of recording, which was not helped by the multiple times that the bot found the hatch before me and escaped. That being said, this method isn't foolproof, so if there are any that you think are missing, let me know. Now, you might think that you know the hatch spawn for shack, as the spawn is usually pretty generic across all maps. However, there are 3 maps that have shack spawns that don't follow the same hatch location rules. If you think you know them, pause the video right now, comment them, and see if you're right at the end. I've done the complex maths, and there's almost an equal chance for a map to not have a shack or to not have a main. So while it is statistically slightly more likely to get a map that has a shack, as most shack spawns are generic, it's also more likely that the killer will know where the spawn is and beat you to it. However, with main hatch spawns, it's probably more unlikely that the killer will know where that hatch specifically spawns, allowing you to find it first. Main buildings are usually also considerably larger, so even if the killer is in main with you, you'll still have a better chance to get to the spawn before them if you know where it is. About a quarter of all the maps in Dead by Daylight have multiple main spawns. This means that they have 2 or more spawn locations, so even if the killer knows all of the locations hatch can spawn in main, they can't protect all of them, which gives you a higher chance of escaping as opposed to shack spawn, which is almost always the same spawn. Finally, shack can rotate depending on the map orientation, however, the related hatch spawns will always keep with the building rotation, whether they're on the inside or the outside. Feel free to pause at any time during this video if you need more time to figure out where a hatch spawn is, as some of them are a little tricky. There are also timestamps in the description below if you just want to check out a specific map. Let's go! First up is Autohaven Wreckers with Azrael's resting place, and the main hatch spawn is between the window and the breakable door in the main building. On Blood Lodge, the main hatch spawns next to the stairs in the main building between one of the 2 open windows. On Gas Heaven, the main hatch spawns in the garage between the car and the breakable door. Wrecker's Yard doesn't have a main hatch spawn as there's no main building, however the shack spawn is consistent with all other generic shacks. On Wretched Shop, the main hatch spawn is outside the strong main window next to the rock away from the breakable door. Moving on to Backwater Swamp, the main hatch spawns inside Grim Pantry down the stairs that can sometimes have the landing that leads to the basement. On the Pale Rose, the main hatch spawns opposite the giant paddle wheel under where the main generator spawns on top of the boat. For Coldwind Farm, on Fractured Cowshed, the main hatch spawns between the hay bales in the centre of the main building. Inside the Rancid Abattoir, to the left of the unsafe pallet, is where you'll find the main hatch spawn for this map. Much like Wrecker's Yard, there's no main building, so there's no main hatch spawn. However, the generic shack spawn for this map remains the same. The Thompson House actually has 2 main hatch spawns, with the first one being on the porch outside the main near the window, and the second one being in the corner of the kitchen inside the main building. Torment Creek is the first map that we've come across that has 3 main hatch spawns, with the first being outside the breakable wall of the blimp near the strong window when the door's not broken, the second one being on the opposite side of the blimp from the first hatch spawn, and the third one being to the front left of the blimp near the unsafe pallet. Moving to the Crota's Pen Asylum, on the Disturbed Ward, the main hatch spawns inside the main near the breakable wall just past the glass window vault. On Filer Campbell's Chapel, the main spawns in the corner of main in front of a door under the main walkway. On the Decimated Borgo, the Shattered Square has 2 main spawns, each being on one side of the main building, either the front or the back depending on which way you look at it. For the first map in Devaka Deepwood, the Nostromo wreckage actually has 4 main spawns, with the first being in the back right corner of main near the spacesuit. Next is in the small room next to the main generator that has the vault that leads out of the ship. The third is between 2 lockers in the dead middle of the main, and the final one is to the right of main in the corridor near the vault. Now I know there's no actual shack on this map, but the crash ship in the back right corner actually represents the shack, and there are 2 hatch spawns for it. The first is at the back of the crash ship near the lit engine, and the second one is on the other side to the right of the front of the ship. Toba Landing only has 1 main hatch spawn, and that's just past the hook near the stairs in front of the ditch underneath the building. For the Forsaken Boneyard, Eyrie of Crows has a main spawn between the stairs at the back of main behind the main generator. Eyrie of Crows is the second of only 3 maps that doesn't have a generic shack spawn, with the hatch actually spawning inside the main building near the open window. As you can imagine, the game on Gideon Meat Plant has no consistent hatch spawns as there's no shack and there's no main building. Grave of Glenvale's Dead Dog Saloon also has 3 main spawns. The first main spawn is out the front entrance near the unsafe pallet. The second main spawn is outside main in the desert between the stairs and the railing vault. And the third main spawn is just past the second main spawn in front of the side exit. Lampkin Lane on Haddonfield has 4 main hatch spawns. The first spawn is between the hedge and the tree outside the main house. The second main spawn is against the back wall behind the main house. The third main spawn is inside the main building at the end of the hall near the basement. And the final spawn is near the porch steps behind the main house. The underground complex in Hawkins National Laboratory has no consistent main hatch spawn and no shack hatch spawn. Just like Hawkins, the treatment theatre on Larry's Memorial Institute also has no main or shack hatch spawn. Moving on to the first map on the Macmillan Estate, Coal Tower, the first main hatch spawn is behind the main building near the double lockers, and the second hatch spawn is in front of the breakable entrance inside the main building. Groening Storehouse only has 1 main hatch spawn, and that's inside the main building between the chest and the generator. Another 2 main spawns on Ironworks of Misery, the first being inside main near the ground floor vault, and the second main hatch spawn is opposite the first one on the other side of the building adjacent to the generator. The main hatch spawn for Shelter Woods is in the middle of the camp in front of the room with the purple light. On Suffocation Pit, the main hatch spawn is outside the main building, past the breakable wall, near the unsafe window. Mount Ormond Resort has 3 main hatch spawns and a generic shack spawn, with the first main hatch spawn being in front of the bar in the main building. The second main hatch spawn is near the first set of stairs to go up to the balcony. The final main hatch spawn is on the middle landing of the stairs that lead into the interior of main. Moving on to Raccoon City. Raccoon City Police Station, East Wing, has no consistent main or hatch spawn, and this is the same for the West Wing as well. Also, can I mention that it's called Police Station, not Police Department? Is that not weird? In Red Forest, Mother's Dwelling has 1 main hatch spawn, which is inside the main building on the opposite end of the table to the fireplace. The Temple of Purgation also has 1 main hatch spawn, which is underground in the temple directly opposite the side that has the generator spawn. Silent Hills Midwich Elementary School has no consistent hatch spawn for the main and no consistent hatch spawn for the shack. In Springwood, Badham Preschool 1 through 5 all have the same hatch spawns. All these hatch spawns are in the school, with the first being down the stairs near the main generator. The second hatch spawn is near the first one, near the bed in the school, just down the first flight of stairs. The final hatch spawn is also downstairs in the school, in the second large room under the hole in the floor. Moving on to Yamoka Estate, the family residence only has 1 main hatch spawn, which is in the intersection in the main building. Sanctum of Wrath also has 1 main hatch spawn, which is just below the stairs vault to the side of the shrine. The Withered Isle realm now has 2 maps in it, with the first one being Garden of Joy. Garden of Joy has 3 main hatch spawns, with the first one being in the corner of the kitchen in the main building. The second hatch spawn is also in the main building, just inside the front door. The final hatch spawn is to the left of the main building down the ramp against the wall of the house. Garden of Joy is also the final of the 3 maps that has a different shack spawn, with this hatch spawning in front of and in the middle of the 2 lockers. Greenville Square, the most recent map to come out at the time of this video being made, only has 1 main hatch spawn, and that's at the back of the main building in front of the projector screen near the pallet. You guys want to see a magic trick? right there. Other side of this ute against that door. I'm so confident. Whoop! Baby. How does he do it? How does he predict it? How does he know?